Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast, where we talk about how to be a more successful multifamily investor with a focus on using technology to boost your business. And now your host, Todd Heitner.
Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Today we'll be talking about buying an apartment building for beginners. I'll be interviewing Peter Harris. He's the author of the best-selling book, Commercial Real Estate Investing for Dummies. Peter has acquired over $100 million worth of apartments and other commercial properties all across the United States. In this interview, Peter answers the 10 most commonly asked questions about how to get started buying your first apartment building. So let's get started. All right, well, Peter, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. We want to really focus today on apartment investing for beginners, someone that's thinking about getting into that. So I want to cover some information on that. So thanks again for coming on. How are you doing today?
You're welcome. Doing awesome.
So to start then, for somebody that's thinking about getting into apartment investing, could you talk about some of the benefits of that? Why would somebody want to get into investing in apartments?
That's easy for me, Todd, because I've been doing this since the late 90s, and I have lots of benefits, and also I have shared with many people across the country, benefits. And so three stick out right away. Number one, for me, it allowed me to retire from my corporate job, right, in the early 2000s. And secondly, for another person, it could be job safety for income. You get your hours reduced. And the third option, the third benefit would be options, right? So apartment investing gives you options. Let's say that you wanted to leave your job. You have an option to do that if you can invest in apartments well. If you wanted to work less hours, like me, when I was an engineer, I wanted to work less hours. I could spend more time with my son, and secondly, work on more of my investing so I can get the heck out of my job. Okay, so it gave me options there. And thirdly, if you were happen to be laid off, you can choose whether you want to go back or not. So to me, that's the biggest option. It gives you life choices.
And so for somebody that maybe doesn't have any real estate experience, maybe they've never bought and sold houses or anything like that, what would you recommend for someone starting out fresh into real estate?
Number one, to get educated. Read and watch videos as much as you can, get educated. And if you want a shortcut, hire a mentor. And the third thing I would say, Todd, is start small. There's nothing wrong with starting small. You can start off with a duplex, triplex, fourplex, 12 unit. Start small is always my recommendation. Get your feet wet first, because we're all going to make mistakes in this business. We all do, right? If you talk with someone, they said never had a failure, never had a mistake, that's a lie, right? And if it's true for them, you just wait. So you just be in this business long enough, and it will happen. So when you start small and you make mistakes, the mistakes are small, right? I bought a property in the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. I bought it in the East Coast when I was an engineer, and I really blew it on this 4-unit. But luckily, the apartment building was so small, my mortgage payment was like $300 a month. So I can make the mistake and be okay, right? Mm-hmm. And but if it was $30,000 or $40,000 a month like the mortgages are today, then I would be in trouble, right? If I made mistakes. So start small.
Okay, good advice. And would you say that there's a minimum amount of money that somebody would need to have to be able to get started investing in apartments?
There is an ideal amount. The ideal amount is 25% down payment, right? That's what lenders want. So that's ideal. And but there really is no minimum. I'm not a person to believe in no money down. I don't like those type of deals. I think you're leveraging too much. But if you can get educated, perhaps watch my videos, you'll come up with 4 choices to finance your first deal. Number one is, to have your own down payment. Number 2, you can do a master lease, right? Master lease agreement, not a master lease option, a master lease agreement. I have lots of trainings on that. It's basically you understand the terms or the motivations of the seller, and you structure your deal based upon the seller motivations, right? So we can do 10% down, 5% interest, 5 years. We have that structure. So that will be second. So first, your own down payment. Second, master lease. And third, how about using investor money, right? You can do that. And fourth, wholesale. Like you wholesale a single family home, you could wholesale your apartment building too to make money, right? To save up to do your own deal if you don't have enough money. So 4 choices there.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And so what about credit? Does a person need to have good credit to be able to invest in apartments?
It's ideal to have good credit because you get more lenders working for you, and the more lenders that want to work with you, the better the terms could be. So that would be ideal to have good credit, but it's not necessary. So I happen to work with a few people that have no credit, from bankruptcies, foreclosures, and things like that. So I have to point them towards doing something creative. And my favorite technique for creative real estate is the master lease agreement, and or some other form of seller financing. Those are my 2 favorites. So I guess the long and short answer would be no, you don't need to have perfect credit, but you do need to have some creativity and some tools in your tool belt on how to take down deals with creative financing.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
So then what about somebody who does have some experience with like single family investing? They bought houses, over a period of time, and they're wanting to get into multifamily. Do you have any suggestions for how to make that transition?
So number one, I'm a big believer in education. So number one, you need to get educated in how this business works. Okay. So investing in apartments, investing in single family homes are so different. They're apples and oranges, but they do carry over to one another. So you don't have to, you don't have to buy single family home first to go into apartments. You can start with apartments first, right? But they are different. So I would say, of course, education, number one. Number two, I would say start local. All right. So don't try to, you live in California and go to Texas on your first deal, right, to get started. I wouldn't recommend that because it's so hard to invest remotely. And the third thing that no one really thinks about, especially when they're beginners, is for that person is to have the end goal in mind, right? And what I mean by that are your exit strategies. Those are so important. They're never talked about. You can Google, commercial real estate exit strategies or apartment exit strategies, and nothing will exist. But it's the most important thing because if you can start with the end goal in mind, it helps you with the beginning. Here's what I mean by that. If you buy an apartment building, what's your exit strategy? And your exit strategy is your plan to get the money that you put in out of the investment, right? To make money, right? That's the goal. But you need to have a plan and exit strategy in place before you even make the offer, before you buy the property, right? And exit strategies could be, buy the property and keep it long term. That's number one. Number two, you may want to buy, fix it up and flip it, and then sell it and 1031 exchange to another property. You could do that. Or you may want to buy it, fix it up, and do a cash out refi, right? So, and there's variations of all those, of 3 of those. Now, all 3 require different types of loans, all 3. So that's why it behooves you to know your exit strategy going in, so you know at least what type of loan to get, right? Amongst everything else in designing those exit strategies. So I would say, number one, get educated. Number 2, start local. And number 3, understand why you're buying the property. Have your exit strategy thought of in advance.
Another thing is, one term, if anybody that's heard anything about apartment investing at all, is the word syndication. Could you briefly explain what it means to do syndication with apartment investing and the benefits of doing that?
I've done plenty of it, still do it. So I'll share with you. So my first syndicated deal was basically, syndication is pooling of others and yours, money to buy a property. And you would do that because you don't have enough of yours. Okay. So you can buy a larger property if you can get your money and pool it with others and take down a larger property. And then you have split up the interest or ownerships in the property accordingly. So my first syndicated deal, it was a small deal. And again, it's okay starting small. I needed to raise 66 or like $70,000, right? This is way back when. And so I had exhausted all of my own money. And this was a great deal in Arizona. It was like a 13-unit property or something around there. And it was a value add deal, great value add deal. I ran out of money. So I went out and I found two people that I knew very well. I worked with them for like 10 years. And I knew them very well, really good friends of mine. And I said, hey, I have this deal. They actually approached me. I was I was an engineer walking between buildings, and they stopped me and said, hey, we heard what you're doing. They actually saw my Corvette outside and went, how does this guy work in this building and have a Corvette, right? So they put two and two together. Oh, he invests in real estate. So they stopped me and they said, if you run across any opportunity where we can invest with you, let us know. So I ran across that deal in Arizona and I approached them and we did a very simple split, right? So it's my first deal that I was going to syndicate. So I wanted to make sure it was successful and they would invest with me. So I gave them 75% of the deal. I took 25%. I did all the work. We both signed on the loan, but I did all the work. I found the property, due diligence, financing, hired the property manager, oversaw the asset management, and helped out the taxes, everything. And we ended up doing really, really well in the deal. So with them, for future deals, it ended up being 50-50 with them putting in all the money. So on my Arizona deal, they put in all the money and I split it 75-25. On future deals with them, they put in all the money, but now split it 50-50 because now I brought that value to the table. Mm-hmm. So that's what syndication is. And for a new person thinking of syndication, it's not as easy as it sounds. And so I want to just share with you, I would say the 4 or 5 things you need to bring to the table if you're thinking about syndication, right? And you just can't go out and just get the money in and just invest it. It takes a lot more work than that. So here are the, I would say 4 things. Number 1, you need a financial model, right? So you need to be able to put the numbers into your spreadsheet and figure out what the cash flows are, cash and cash returns, ROI, along with your splits with your investors. You need to have that financial model, number 1. Number 2, you need to figure out, how much money you need, your use of funds, right? You need down payment, you need renovation costs, you need closing costs, attorney fees, all that stuff, holding costs, all that. You need to figure that out. And then number 3, really important, is where people miss out, is what is the deal's ROI? Because once you know the return on investment, you know what you can pay to the investor, right? Doesn't that make sense? So yeah, a person says, I'm going to pay this investor 10% return on their money. Oh, really? Okay, so let's run your numbers and let's see if the deal can afford it, right? So ends up the deal that they bring to the table, it has a 10% cash on cash return. So you're telling me that you're going to pay them 10%, so you're giving them all the money. So there's nothing left over for you. So that's why it's important to know the deal's ROI, so you know what you can peel off and pay the investor. And the 4th thing would be a compelling presentation. You have to sell the deal to the investor, right? It has to be compelling, concise, and complete, right? So, and then the 4th thing is you need people to share your deal with. Now, I have this formula because I've been sharing this for so many years on people, how to get started with syndication is you need at least 30 people. And these 30 people are people that you know, or people that you know of that may have money, okay? Or people that they may know that have money. And basically, why 30, right? So I had this ratio a long time ago, and it still applies today. So you're going to show your deal to 30 people. And out of those 30 people, 15 will be interested. Other 15 won't, okay? And out of those 15 interested, 7 or 8 will want to go further with you, okay? So let me see what you actually have, okay? So you went 30 to 15 to 7 and 8. Out of those 7 or 8 people, 3 or 4 are really interested. You have dinner with them, they have the money, they're really interested, they like the deal and everything. So out of those 3 and 4, only 1 or 2 are going to invest. Now that, so for beginner, that's the ratio. It's not an exciting ratio, but that's the facts. That's the real life when you're first starting off. Now, after you close your first deal, you can throw that ratio out the window, okay? Because now you have a track record, and it's so much easier to raise money when you have a track record. But when you're first starting out, that 30 to 15 to 7 to 8 to 3 to 4 to 1 to 2 ratio, it's the way it is, and because you're just starting out.
Yeah. All right. Well, this sounds good. And speaking of, getting in those investors, one of the things that I know can get people in trouble is with the SEC if they don't know what they can and can't do when it comes to talking to investors.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about that, like what people need to know to avoid any kind of trouble with that?
I will not talk a little about it. I will say one thing: get an attorney to help you with it, right? And because the laws change all the time, there's so many different options, what to do, and there's so many things that you shouldn't be doing, right? And I am not qualified to speak to that because I'm not an attorney. So anytime we work in a deal where there's money to be raised, yep, it goes to attorney and they cross-check and check everything, make sure you're following all the rules, because you could, okay, here's the law right here. You could go to your mom and say, Mom, I'm buying this property and I need $20. Okay, your mom gives you $20. Do you know that's illegal to borrow $20 from mom for a real estate investment? So you just raised a security issue with your mom. So you can get in big trouble because you borrowed $20 from your mom. So that's how stringent it is. So it's best to talk to an attorney whenever you're going to raise any amount of money, period.
All right, good advice. So then let's say somebody is trying to start out. How important would you say that credibility is when it comes to investing in apartments, and what can a person do to build some credibility then, especially if they don't have any experience?
And that's a lot of folks, right? I mean, they're so attracted to apartments, and they want to get started. They don't have the credibility. They want to syndicate deals. They want to get started. So credibility is it's important, and it comes down to trust, right? Can that person trust you, right? To perform, what you say you're going to do, right? You're going to pay me, 8% interest on my money, or you're going to pay me quarterly, whatever. Can they trust you? So credibility is really important. One thing you can do to help build it is to do a deal yourself. So if you want to get into syndication, you don't have a track record. What if you just do a small deal yourself, right? Then you can just talk about the deal, even if it's a duplex, right? And you crush it. You can talk about that. You can talk about how you bought this duplex, under market, you fix it up, and now it's cash flowing. You have a 50% cash on cash return. All these things, you can talk about this. Or what if you do like a small 5-unit apartment building, considered commercial, right? And you increase the NOI. And as you know, Todd, as you increase the NOI, the property value goes up. So what if you just start in a small 5-unit property, and you increase the rents, you increase the NOI, and then you increase so much value now that you can do a cash out refi. I mean, you can pull your money out, right? Your down payment. And then so you can write a whole page of how that happened on the 5-unit and make you appear to be very, very smart with a small deal. So a small deal is absolutely okay. So there's no problem with the small deal. So go ahead and start with a small deal. So the other way to get instant credibility is to partner with someone, right? Someone who's already been there all the way, already has, can show track record, has, completed deals. Start with someone. So that's another way of increasing your credibility. The other thing is, the last thing is, you can do all the above, but Todd, you create these wonderful websites. So that's a great way to have like instant credibility, because the websites are, the verbiage on it and the content on it looks like you already have experience, right? So instant experience. And then all you have to do there is wow them with your knowledge and then, get them on board.
All right, good advice. And so I know that you've coached a lot of people and helped them to get their first deal. Could you maybe tell us about some real life examples of people doing their first deals, maybe things that and go through that process and maybe any challenges they ran into?
Yeah, I have quite a few. I've been teaching and mentoring since 2003, along with doing my own deals. So yeah, I enjoy taking down my own deals, and I take the challenges and I turn them into lessons. So if you go on to, if you just do YouTube, and YouTube, my name, Peter Harris, you'll see our YouTube channel. We have, I think I have like 32 million hits or something like that, or views or something like that. So and then so on that channel, there's a case study from a real student. It's called How Chris Made $1 Million, how Chris became a millionaire in 1 year, right? And we, so a lender approached me and said, Peter, do you have anyone in this area that can help us out with one of our customers who's having trouble with his apartment building? So I looked at the deal and go, wow, there's great potential. It was a 90-unit apartment building near Houston. So I called my client. I said, hey, I know you're just starting out with me. You're a beginner, but you have the means, the muscle to take down this deal. You just need my help. And so make a long story short, we bought this 90-unit building with hard money because it was in that shape. It was 50% occupied at that point. And so what we had to do was bought it with hard money, also borrowed about $1 million in renovation costs, put the money inside, and bought it at about $30,000 a door, right? And then then put it on $1 million, and then now is worth about $78,000 a door today, 4 years later. And so the challenges were many, right? Especially when you're first starting out. I wasn't there, so I was on the phone with him weekly, sometimes daily, walking him through, the whole process. But the number one thing was that the management was horrible. So we went through 2 property management companies, and they wouldn't do, they could probably trick our client into, they're doing a good job. They couldn't trick me because I've done dozens of these types of deals already. So I would just continually call them out. And eventually we had to switch management companies. So we finally found one, a good one in Houston. And from there, we went from 50% occupancy to 70% occupancy to 90. And now today we're nearly 100% occupied. So bought the property at $3 million. So put $1 million into it. And then 2 years later, right after put the $1 million into it, and he put it into a permanent loan. And then at the same time that the permanent loan, pulled out the down payment and the renovation money, because the property is now worth over $6 million, right? So that person went on to do more deals with me. Now he's in a really awesome RV storage deal, and he's 100% occupied, and it's awesome. So, and then the second deal I'll share with you is I had a person who was in his mid 60s and didn't have a retirement. He just had $100,000 to his name in cash, didn't have a retirement. Engineer guy, really cool guy. And then he wanted to invest in commercial real estate to establish a retirement. Great plan. So we end up finding he's in Colorado, end up finding I think it's a nine-unit deal in Colorado. The owner lived in Seattle, and the property was in shambles. So we end up buying that property, right, at a good price. Again, got the lender to help us with the acquisition, and well, you know what? No, the lender did not help us with the renovation. So the renovation came out of his pocket. So he bought the property, renovation money out of his pocket. But guess what? He bought it for like 3 something. He put in like 50,000, so 350. Now the property's worth about $600,000, right? And he's in a position now to do a cash out refi and pull everything out. But he's enjoying the cash flow so much that he decided he's not going to refinance and have a higher loan. He's going to enjoy the cash flow, right? So those type of deals, for me, Todd, it comes down to who the person is, right? There are a lot of people out there, a lot of money, but I want to hear your story, right? You don't have to have a lot of money. I want to hear your story, and you have the capability of being in this business, meaning desire, being able to work hard, being creative, and being coachable. right? That's what I look for in a person. So those two people that I work with, their lives are changed forever because of one deal. One deal, lives changed forever.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor. When we come back, we'll talk about the most common pitfalls for new investors, and we'll answer the question, should I have a partner? So stay tuned. Do you need funding for your multifamily deals? Well, we've partnered with one of the biggest names in multifamily lending to help you get a loan for your next deal. Just go to apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding and fill out the short contact form, and our lending partner will get in touch with you. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding. And so for somebody that's starting out, what are some common pitfalls that a person might run into that our listeners should be aware of?
Three come to mind right away. Number one is overpaying for properties, right? That's a common pitfall. And let's face it, today, we're probably close to the market or approaching the top of the market. I mean, close to the top of the market or approaching it, right? And so right now there are there's an abundance of overpriced deals, and people are still buying them, right? So when you buy a overpriced deal, you have to be prepared to hold it long term, right? Because the market is going to change. It always does. So it will never continue going up. No matter, if you've been in the business for 10 years, all you've seen is the market going up. Guess what, right? I've been through 3 of these already. Guess what? In a few years, it's going to come back down. Maybe not down to the bottom, but it's going to come back down. And then the values won't be, the value of the property isn't going to be that great. And then, so what do? So you overpaid, you can't do a cash out refi, you probably can't even refi, right? So that could be a pitfall, because if you do let's say you buy a property today and it's a 5-year loan on it, and in 5 years, the economy tanks and the property value comes up, but guess what? Your loan is due, you have to get a new loan. You can't, because there's not enough equity there, right? So that's the problem with overpaying, right? I guess the second pitfall would be, and this one's big. This was underestimating expenses. A new investor has no clue what the expenses should be on a property. No clue, because they don't own anything, right? And so they tend to believe what the broker or what the seller gives them. What the broker gives them and what the seller gives them are always 100% wrong. Have to say that, right? And and it's not the broker's fault, it's not the seller's fault. They're just reporting what they have, right? But the reality of what they gave you in terms of written expenses don't correlate to what you're actually going to spend on the property. It never does. So the second pitfall would be underestimating the expenses, right? So they'll take what they have on the profit and loss statement or the broker statement, and they'll think that's it, but it's usually not it. Some categories that are always maybe misrepresented or misunderstood are maintenance repairs, right? So in different parts of the country, repairs cost different amounts, but and oftentimes a seller or a broker may not report all of the repairs because it'll kill the deal, right? So how much do you know? How much what level of expenses can you put on the property? If you're a beginner, you don't know. So that can be an issue there too, right? So this just one of many. So the other common pitfall would be poor property management, and I have to say this, that 9 out of 10 property managers aren't that good, talk to another experienced investor and they're probably not their head. Then yep, Peter's right. So when you find a good property manager, stick with that person, nurture the relationship, and build your portfolio with that one person. That's what we've been doing. So you find a good person, stick with them, because they are golden when they're good. And so I'll say this on the property management. I go by this, the 4 M's. So you need these 4 legs for any property manager to operate your property optimally, right? And the 4 M's, I call them, right? So you need a system for money, for marketing, for management, and maintenance, the 4 M's. If one of these fall apart, all three will fall apart. For example, if your property manager is not good at marketing, right? What leg is going to fall apart? The money part will fall apart. If they're not good at maintenance, so what part falls down? The marketing part falls down. The whole thing falls down. So you see what I mean? So the 4 M's. So if you look at a person that has a poor property management, or maybe is a poor property manager or hired one, it's one of the 4 M's that are not operating well, and it tends to crash everything else in. All right. Sorry for diverging, but this property management thing it's such a huge thing on my heart, and how I can help most people is to help them manage the management.
Well, I'm glad you went into that. I was going to ask about that. What you look for in management. Right. That's good. Yeah. Excellent. And so we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier about partnering with somebody else on your first deal. And I know you mentioned that the credibility is a big benefit of that. Are there any other benefits or anything, or maybe any pitfalls to look for with partnering?
There's many. Partnering with someone should be your last resort. It really should, because having partners in anything is tough, right? I mean, look at you and I, we're married. It's not easy being married, right? That's the ultimate partner right there, So imagine having a relationship, a business relationship, who is not as committed as you and I to our wives, right? It's tough, right? And the big thing is property management. I mean, not property management, but your skin in the game, right? So when you're married to your spouse, you're in it for life, till death do us part, right? And you made a covenant with God, right? That you're going to stay married, right? There's no such thing with an investment partner, right? So if they don't have skin in the game, guess what? When times get tough, they go bye-bye, and it leaves you with it. So partnering is tough. It should be a last resort, right? It should be a last resort. So, but it is a resort, right? I mean, you can syndicate and be very successful, right? But if you could do it yourself, you should do it yourself. But if you have to bring in a partner, do it right. Make sure there's skin in the game on both sides.
And so is there anything else there? Do you have any other suggestions for somebody that's wanting to get started investing in apartments? Anything else they should know?
I guess I can kind of reiterate kind of what I said. Number one is, if you're brand new, Todd, I suggest starting small, right? And it's safer, and it's conservative, and it gets you in the game, and it gets you practicing, right? So practice, right? And because if you were to buy a fourplex as opposed to a 20 unit, guess what? You're going to deal with the same things, right? All the bills, the management, the marketing side, the repairs, right? Managing the asset, it's the same from a 4 unit to a 20 unit to the 100 unit. In principle, it's the same. So get started or get practice on a small deal. All right. And the second thing I would say is get help from someone, right? So if you're brand new, I mean, let's face it, if you are an older person, let's say you're in your 50s like myself, or let's say you're in your 40s, and you have some money saved up, and you're approaching the second half of your life, or in the second half of your life, you have to be really careful with the amount of money that you have, right? So you can't make a mistake. So my recommendation is get someone on your team to help you that has gray hair, right? So get someone that has scars from investing already, so they can teach you what not to do, right? I wish I had that early on. I would have less gray hair. And then, so start small, be conservative, and second, get help. And then the third one would be to know your numbers, right? And, there's this TV show I like a lot. It's called The Profit. You ever watch that show where Marcus Lemonis?
No, I haven't seen it. I've heard of it.
It's a cool show, right? And he helps out entrepreneurs, and he's always focused on the numbers. And when people don't know their numbers, he just loses it, right? And I won't lose it, but inside, when a person knows numbers, I kind of lose it on the inside. What do you mean? Real estate is a numbers game. What do you mean you don't know your numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And so number 3 would know your numbers. For example, what to know: the market cap rate, the operating expenses, the rent trends, the price per unit. All those things that you need to know. You need to know your numbers so that you can make a good decision.
Okay, great. Sounds like solid advice.
Great, great.
Okay, well, thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share
My pleasure. My pleasure. Always great to hear from you, Todd.
Yeah, you too. And so what's the best way for people to connect with you if they'd like to learn more about you?
Sure. You can reach me at my website. So you can go to commercialpropertyadvisors.com, reach me there, or you can just send a message to me if you want, or email to me at peterharris@commercialpropertyadvisors.com, and I'll hear from you there.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Todd. See you later.
Are you ready to get started investing in apartments, but not quite sure where to start? Download a free copy of our resource called How to Get Started with Apartment Investing. It includes the 4 steps you need to take, as well as some great resources to help you take those next steps. So download it right now for free at apartmentinvestorpro.com/get started. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/get started. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. Also, visit our website at apartmentinvestorpro.com and connect with us.